But welcome everyone to the show. I've got here with me today Anna Wick. Yeah, I've been wanting to talk to her for a little while now, and we finally been able to make it work. Anna was actually you were one of the first Substackers that I read on
Really?
Substack. Yeah,
I
I think
didn't
you
remember
might have been.
this.
Yeah, you might have been like I think you might have been the first, and then like Melissa Corrigan was the second, and then I wrote,
Yeah.
and then I because I remember you writing a piece of sort of about your experience. I think it was with your kids or the divorce, and kind of going back and forth. So, um, I wanted to talk to you about that for a little while. So, what kind of what is your like for people who don't know you? What's your writing like? Like what kind of and like especially about your I know we started the show with you talking about your divorce.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about that. Like, what what was that kind of life that you lived then and what you're living now?
Sure. I was raised as a conservative Christian, homeschooled from K through 12, like 12th grade. Withheld from college. Was told girls don't get higher education. Women are you're meant to be married. You're meant to start having children right off the bat. You're supposed to line up with a hopefully a young man that meets all of these criteria. So, long story short, that was my upbringing. I ended up having a long distance arranged courtship. It was not technically called dating. We weren't allowed to date. We were very much in line with the Josh Harris. Oh gosh, what's the name of his book? Like saving your heart for marriage or whatever it is. Like I kissed. It's called I Kissed Dating Goodbye. So Josh Harris heavily influenced my approach to relationships growing up. And I was like, no dating, no sex before marriage. I was a virgin on my wedding night. I'm very open about that. Purity culture through and through. So yeah, I was raised to be a traditional a trad wife, for lack of a better term. I love that. I love and hate it, but like there's a lot of light being shown right now in the trad wife movement because of what's going on in our politics, our culture. Well, that was me. My parents had a very traditional marriage as well. So like I was just kind of sh- uh, I was kind of like, what's the word? Kind of just shuffled into that style of marriage from the get go. I was
Mhm.
told that I needed to submit to the man as that the head, the authority figure in my life. That I needed to look to him for all things spiritual guidance, lifestyle guidance, political guidance. That was I needed to literally be under his headship. So, long story short, they found me a guy in Montana. Didn't work out for a variety of reasons I do write about on my Substack. And I try to write carefully, cautiously, in consideration because I still have share minor children with this person. So I'm trying to put things out there on the internet that aren't going to get me in too much hot water, legally speaking, but still sharing my side of the story, which is I eventually, about 4 years in, left that. Um, in a very disastrous fashion, survived an ATF SWAT raid at home, which was interesting. That's what
Wow.
drove me back to move back to California because my family's from California. So sought shelter here, sought employment here, found my roots here, and I've been here ever since. And
Okay.
it's yes, been sticky. Lots of
So
issues along the way, but
like it's interesting. So like again, you're you don't date, right? So never had like a boyfriend or anything like that before, like, and so you're getting arranged, like an arranged, literally like an arranged marriage
yeah.
to a man. Did you guys meet before? Did he fly out and meet you with your parents? Like, did you like how?
We
What
did.
was okay?
So We met about 6 times before we got like, I took vows to this person to honor and obey him for the rest of my life, though, was in my wedding vows. My parents made sure that I specifically had that written into my wedding vows to honor and obey. So I met him 6 times beforehand. He flew out. Actually, his family drove out in December of 2009, asked my father if he could court me with the intention of marriage, and then 2 months later decided that he wanted to marry me, so flew out again, asked my father secretly unbeknownst to me for my hand in marriage. So it was very much me being passed down from the headship of my father to my husband. It was like, "Oh, well, he needs to get permission for this." And it's kind of just it's like, Anna's a piece of property. Hey, you want to buy her? Okay, sure, let's go. um, and then we drove out there. So the first time I ever drove out to Montana was with my family, and he proposed to me on that trip. I said yes. Fast forward to October of that year. So from December 2009 to October of 2010 was our whirlwind courtship slash engagement. And then I married him, packed up my stuff, and moved to Montana. That was going to be my life. That was it.
What was kind of the first moment, I'm just like, so what did I want to kind of understand this sort of transition, right? So you're homeschooled from K through 12. All you've really known is home and your parents. Did they do where you had friends that with other homeschooled people, or you friends within church, or
Yeah, we
right?
had we ran in a lot of homeschooling circles. Sorry, my dog's playing with his toy. We ran with a lot of other homeschooling circles in the area. So I had friends who I'd known since childhood, but same thing. Like all the daughters lived under this model of they're going to stay at home and wait for a man to essentially show up and ask for their hand in marriage. That was the model.
Wow.
Yeah, we also ran in a lot of the big homeschooling conservative circles like Doug Phillips of Vision Forum, R.C. Sproul Jr. of Ligonier Ministries. These are people that we would connect with across the country and invite out to our house, go to their houses. And same thing, like they modeled that women shouldn't really receive higher education or have jobs. I wasn't allowed to have a job outside the home. My money was not my own. It was, all anything that I made was put towards my husband, right? Like, oh, this is going to be shared financially with my husband. You're just waiting for him to come along. You're building essentially a home kit to start your home with. So that was
So
my entire childhood.
even before you're married, any money you get from, say, like, you're working at the soda stand,
Sure.
like during the summer, that money's set aside for your future husband,
Yes.
right?
So when I got married, I had, I want to say like maybe $18,000 in my savings account. And it became our money at that point. It wasn't money that a little bit here and there I spent on myself, but like that was money to start our marriage with. That was my dowry in essence. We're talking like old verbiage, like 1800 style, like the woman comes into the marriage with, look at this bride, she has this in her stash and that, she can start a home, she can have babies for you, she has this money. And I was just pretty much auctioned off, for lack of a better word. It's like did I have a choice in it? Yes and no. I was conditioned to this. I was groomed into this. I really wanted to get out of my life I'd been living in California. So like when it was presented to me that there was this young man in Montana, like he's good looking, etc., like he believes all the same things, I was excited to jump at this opportunity. I was like, yes, let's go. I don't have any problem leaving a life behind. Like I don't have anything here for me. I have no job. I have no real I mean, all the rest of my friends are on track to do the same thing, to get married, to have babies. Most of the peers that I grew up with, the female peers that I grew up with, did indeed get married off, and a lot of them to, other families in the area and continued to have 4 or 5, 6, 7, in some cases, 8 children. I mean, I should be probably on baby number 6 or 7 at this point. But
Sixers. Wow.
I didn't stick with it. I did not stick with it. So yeah, I'm
So
ended it too.
you're going from your life in California, which, it sounds like it was pretty sort of sheltered from the wider world, right?
Yes, I grew up on 36 acres in the Sierra Nevadas, like very much like we don't vaccinate, we're homeschooling, we're afraid CPS will come after us if they find out our kids aren't vaccinated. Very like like think like chicks with their mother, like sheltered chicks growing up on this family property commune. We didn't get out much. I had no exposure to anyone who didn't believe pretty much the same things that we believed. So we weren't friends with people who had differences of belief.
Oh, got it. Okay. So you're growing up. So you're growing up you're growing up in the mountains. You're growing up on these acreage, and you go to Montana. And you go from basically being under your father to now you're a wife.
Yes.
What was like? So was the transition like sort of everything you thought it would be, or what was kind of like? What was your initial kind of like? I'm talking like your first 2 months in, and you're like,
Yeah.
like, how were you feeling? Was it like, oh God, I've made a mistake, or like what? Like,
It was confusing for me. I mean, we're talking. I went from living under the headship of my father and my mother behind the scenes to I'm living a fairly isolated lifestyle there to a fairly isolated slash I know nobody here lifestyle in Montana. It was really tough. There was a lot of culture shock. There was even though we shared a lot of the similar beliefs, like I'm now in suddenly a different state, separated from family. Um, I was, like I said earlier, like I was a virgin, so I'm adjusting to all of a sudden, like now I'm supposed to be a loving wife who gives her husband whatever he wants pleasure wise. And I'm adjusting to this. I was pregnant by month 2. So like I'm also becoming a new mom. Like that was the other part of it. Like I grew up with the belief then that you shouldn't use birth control, that you should accept as many babies as God gives you. We were part of the Quiverful movement. I have 9 other siblings. So I am one of 10. I am the oldest daughter, but it was expected that I would get pregnant right away, that was part of sex is to reproduce children. So there's a lot that's going on. I was happy on the one hand to be outside of kind of the tight control of my parents. It was a pretty stifling for me. I had a lot of unhappiness under the surface that I didn't know how to express. Like I didn't know how to I had seen other children in my circles or slash an older sibling like rebel by leaving, and they were treated with ostracization, they were excommunicated. So there was no real you can make choices as an adult and expect a friendly applause from your family. They're going to kick you out. They're going to tell everyone to shun you. So I was happy to leave and be expressing parts of my life that I hadn't been allowed to express before. But at the same time, too, was adjusting to living with somebody. I'd never lived with a man before, let alone a husband who he is a human. He's expressing, mood swings and ups and downs. And I, as the wife, thought that I was supposed to kind of just placate all of that, let it just, roll, try to be the emotional stability throughout all of our marriage. And I was for a
yeah,
really long time.
okay. And I really want to kind of provide some context for this. Is like, so you go from like no, like, so because again, homeschooled, out on your own, in your own kind of community. You like don't have never had a boyfriend,
Nope.
never like been on like kind of dates, so never really kind of any socialization with the opposite sex, right? Where it's like no, not even little heavy petting or nothing, like not even a kiss.
I wasn't allowed to kiss him on the lips. Like my trying to be somewhat respectful to my parents. as I talk about this, but it was a really big deal that my parents posted publicly online about that I was saving my first kiss for the altar. I was
Wow.
saving it all. So absolutely zero exploration sexually with this man who I was taking vows to honor and obey for the rest of our foreseeable lives until death do us part.
Right. Okay. So so now you're here. You're a new mom. You're kind of
Yeah.
adjusting to life here. You're like you mentioned the sort of the mood swings that and you're trying to be the dutiful wife. You're trying to like okay here so you're figuring this out. Like when did it start to creep in? Like what was the first kind of thing that you can remember where you said, "Man, this might not be for me, right? I might not be in a good situation." What was that first kind of thing?
Um The first kind of thing was, I think, just our struggles with finances. It from the get go. I mentioned previously that I brought into our marriage a pretty hefty savings account. That was then ergo became our money that he got to spend on whatever he wanted, and I'm pretty open about his fascination with guns, building guns, like that was a huge part of our marriage, our life. So I saw our finances and our savings account start to dwindle and our debt start to go up. His employment was like this with various bosses. It wasn't great. I was a stay at home mom. I wasn't allowed to work because good mommies stay at home and take care of the children and homeschool them, etc. So, I mean, our kids were, I had a newborn girl, and then a year and a half later, had another, you know, little daughter. So,
Yeah.
they were very little. I wasn't homeschooling them yet, but I was caretaking for them. So the financial aspect of it became a big burden when we're relying on a sole income of $11 an hour. We were living in poverty.
Yeah.
All the money got spent on guns, which is again, we'll get into that in a minute, but all the money got spent on his obsession with guns, gun parts, etc. There was very little left over for me to spend on myself, let alone try to make sure that our tight budget of $1,800 a month went to rent, went to groceries. My grocery budget for a family of four at the very end for the entire month was $400.
Whoa.
Yes.
Wow.
I got really good at putting money into envelopes, Dave Ramsey style, which I do not recommend Dave Ramsey to anybody at this point. I seriously don't. But Dave Ramsey's, that's what he recommended for good Christian couples was to make sure you put everything into envelopes and you don't spend it. But meanwhile, over here, my ex is spending, he's dropping $1,100 at a time to $1,500 at a time on these rare gun parts that he really, really wanted, and I'm just frustrated because I'm going months without going and getting a haircut. I'm going months without buying myself any new clothes. I am wearing, old boots. I am having to provide for my children and stretch out these our grocery budget in crazy ways. And it was just, but I was also taught to not complain to my husband, to not nag him. I'm literally looking at the journal I kept prior to marriage that has all of these things of don't do this, don't do that. Remember, men are supposed to dominate women. Your husband is supposed to dominate you. You're supposed to submit to him, whatever happens.
Wow. And what's interesting to me about that is did at any time like your father before, because this is an arranged sort of courtship.
Hmm.
Was it like, yeah, brother, I'm gonna need W-2s, I'm gonna need this, like,
That's
I
such a good question. So and the way the way growing up, my understanding of finances again was like, well, even if you make money, like it's not you're not making enough to live on. We're not training you to have to live on your own. Your husband will provide for you. He will be the main breadwinner. So even if I made, a little bit of money and I came into my marriage with a savings account, I had no clue like really what things cost. I'd never paid for rent before on my own. I'd never managed a budget. Again, I go back to my family. My dad provided very well for my mom. My dad has done very well for himself over the course of his life. I had no understanding of money, finances, etc.
Right.
I had no understanding that when my ex comes to approach my parents about my hand in marriage and he says, "Oh, well, I'm making around $25,000 a year." In the grand scheme of the world, like what that means, what that looks like, how we're going to live off of that. I'm just being given the formula that you will make it work. You will make $25,000 a year or less because we were living off of less at the end work for your family.
That just shocks me because, like,
I had no idea.
no, not for you. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
that's understandable where you're at, but you would think that your dad is looking at this guy and going like, "Yeah, this ain't gonna work." Like, like, "Son, you gonna have to no, like, this
There
ain't
was
gonna
a
work."
lot there was a lot and the optics of it really, kind of drove my relationship with my ex-husband. So, I think they looked at it and they said, "Well, but you have potential to make more. You have plans to become a paramedic." Those plans fell through, surprise, surprise, after we got married, like, decided that wasn't for him. So, like, things changed along the way. He was like, "Well, I plan on making more, but I have to do X, Y, and Z." And they're like, "Okay, that's cool." But optics wise, it was my parents wanted it to be a successful courtship story. They wanted to add to the arsenal of stories of look, this is what happens when you homeschool your children and you match them up and it's all perfect on paper and it's this happily ever after. I don't think they really gave two part of my rubbish gave two fucks about the financial aspects of it. They're like, it'll work. And it would just, I mean, we can't back out now. It would just look bad
Wow, okay,
in the
yeah.
circles we were in.
No, no, that honestly makes a whole lot of sense because if you look at sort of, the mainline Christian movement and getting in the further and further you get into this sort of like Christian nationalism, this hard line fundamentalist kind of stuff. It's just like what looks good to the rest of that culture or society, that
Yeah.
community, not
Yeah.
actually what it is and what it actually is doing. So you look at the cover up of sexual abuse, you look at just all the problems that are coming with that. It doesn't matter that you're at or the fact that you're not even living what Christ taught, right? None of that
Yes.
matters. What matters is what are you presenting to the rest of the world? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, speaking of sexual cover-ups, like I hand wrote all of the wedding invitations, right? Like I put so much effort into my wedding to make it a handmade, not over the top, like expensive, extravagant thing. But like my parents had involved themselves in so many circles that I hand wrote probably like 300 wedding invites. Not all of those people attended, but I hand wrote a wedding invite to R.C. Sproul Jr. I hand wrote a wedding invite to Doug Phillips of Vision Forum, who later on had to disband Vision Forum because it came out that he was sexually abusing the nanny of their family. I've been in that household before. Or RC, like I just said, RC Sproul Jr., who got caught using Ashley Madison while his wife was in the hospital with cancer that she passed away from. And he was later arrested for a DUI with his kids in the car. These are people that these were our quote unquote friends. So the optics of it were this is gonna happen, it's gonna look good, and it's gonna be a success story.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So that makes more sense as to why it actually, went forward. So, okay. You're in the house, money situation not going good. Husband's acting like a man child, buying gun parts, not really
Yeah.
sure what's going to, so, you know, you're starting to have these kind of doubts. Like what So where is the headspace there? And like how are you now trying to think like how do I get out? Like how do I get out of here? Like how do I,
Um,
I just want to say I guess that has to be very traumatic because you literally, I'm assuming at this point, like at this point, when you took a vow for life, you meant it, right? And so now you're having that struggle of like, oh man, like I'm having to break this to
yeah.
now because I can't survive, right?
I mean, it's I don't want to say funny. I'm really grateful for where I've ended up at in my life. I'm grateful for even where my parents have ended up at in their life. I just want to preface this with saying that. But like my parents would joke, uh, divorce, never, murder, maybe. Like that was the level of good Christian people don't get divorced. We stop listening to Christian artists. Like if they went through a divorce, like we can't listen to their music anymore. Like that was where we were at. If he's not hitting you or starving you, like you have no biblical grounds for divorce. And when I divorced my ex, was essentially told, you didn't have any biblical grounds for that, even the financial or the emotional aspects of it aside. So yeah, the finances were really wearing on us. That was always a constant in our all of the things like that define me as a person right now. Like I'm a photographer by trade now, right? I'm a food and beverage photographer of 8 years. You can go look at my work. I love what I do. I came into that marriage with a camera. That was not my career because I wasn't allowed to have a career, but like I came into the marriage with a camera setup that I had been interested in photography since I was a teenager, had bought myself a camera, a nice kit, etc. I sold that just so we could have money to buy groceries. I sold every single one of our wedding presents just so that we could pay rent, buy groceries, buy gas. Like it was gone. Everything was gone. But I still, even after the ATF raid, which I'm happy to, delve more into that. But even after that raid, that's not when I left him. I was like still told in my mind, my parents did not encourage me to divorce him. They're like, nope, you still got to make it work. I stood by my man. And it took a really long time. And it was
Yeah,
about a
right.
year after the fallout of the ATF raid that I finally had enough. And I was like, I can't do this anymore.
I mean, I gotta ask if you want to talk about it because when someone says, "Yeah, I was after the ATF," I gotta hear about the ATF rate. You know,
Yeah. So, long story short, he was spending all of our money on buying gun parts kits, primarily for home builds for himself. So he taught himself how to weld. That was a big deal. Like, oh, I bought a welder. I learned how to weld. I'm reassembling guns you shouldn't really be reassembling. But he was selling home build gun parts kits on gunbroker.com and was re-welding them to the point that the ATF went, this is a little in a gray, not a little, a lot in a gray area. We have some suspicions. So they sent an undercover ATF agent to our house. He determined that there was enough stuff going on there to warrant an ATF SWAT raid in March of 2014. So, and I talk about this. I want to be a little careful talking about it because I mean, at this point, like it's trials concluded. It's been 10 years, right? So, like, I want to be careful how I phrase this, but let's just say he had some stuff that they weren't supposed to find, and they didn't find it.
hmm
They didn't find it because I got a tip off from him that they were going to be coming to the house. So there were some things, there were some items of his that I am not proud that he had. But like, again, I'm steeped in conservative world, steeped in the NRA. The federal government is the big bad, the BATF, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. They're the big bad guys. Like, look at what they did at Ruby Ridge. Look at what they did at Waco, etc. So
right.
like, we had talked about it in times past, like, oh my God, what if they come and try to get us? How would we deal with it? Like this was how we talked. This is how we lived. We had stuff that we shouldn't have had. And he should not. He created, he built, he should not have done.
Wow. Yeah, you say he tipped me off or he got a tip. It's like, I just I picture you washing dishes like, oh, by the way, the ATF might be coming through the door, wearing full
Yep.
SWAT gear.
And they it kind of happened that way. So he got a call at 7 in the morning. I mean, when you get a call at 7 in the morning, you know it's what's going on. Who is this? Was called down to a local police station. And I feel comfortable talking about this because it's all on record. Got called down to the local police station, calls me 10 minutes later. My daughter's in a high chair. My youngest is still asleep in her crib in their bedroom and says, "Hey, an ATF SWAT team is about to hit the house. You know what to do." I go,
Yeah.
go into his office, go get big handfuls of stuff that if they had found, I would have been arrested and our children probably would have gone into child protective services that day. So I went and hid some things that they should not have found. And then within 5 minutes of hiding those things, opened the door to the SWAT team and said, "Hello, officers. I've heard you were on your way. You may come in." And sat on the floor of my living room for an hour with my two daughters in my lap while they searched every nook and cranny of the house and made me unlock computers, confiscated a whole bunch of stuff. And then they said, "Okay, you're free to go. We didn't find anything we can arrest you for," in essence.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was a first, and I hope the last. I
So
don't currently have anything afraid of them discovering in my house.
no, I understand. So now, you're here. It's like you've had the ATF stuff,
Yep,
still standing by your husband, who's
I
kind
did.
of like, okay, like, you know, uh, so where, like, did it get any kind of, at, was this rock bottom or was there more? Right?
There was more. We moved. I fled to California. He followed me about a month later. We tried to make it work in California. He decided there were no jobs for him in all of the state of California and just wanted to move back to Montana. I, being a dutiful wife that I was, moved back to Montana and started working as a dishwasher at a local bistro to make ends meet at $7 an hour. So he was working a part time job. I was working a part time job. We were both completely stressed out, not knowing because the federal government moves slow, not knowing when the trial was going to happen, what he was going to get charged with, etc. So there's a lot of stress hanging over our heads. Long story short, I decided I couldn't do it anymore. I was at my emotional breaking point, my mental breaking point, and I packed up my stuff and moved back to California again. He followed me one more time, one last time. We couldn't make it work, and he moved back to California, or excuse me, back to Montana. My daughters moved. Again, long story short, but my daughters moved back for the winter time to stay with him, and at that point, it was all bad. It would just
Wow.
went downhill in terms of our personal interactions, being able to, peacefully get through any kind of disagreements about parenting. I filed for divorce. He was very unhappy. Went back to you have no grounds for divorce, etc. And I was a broke at that point single mom without any real family support on my end, and he had a family that was willing to help support him with childcare, and I had no way to pay for a babysitter or a daycare, and still hold down a job. Like I was in a catch 22 at that point with my kids.
And I mean, you know, that's a tough call to make. That's a really strong, kind of tough call to make. I mean, you're leaving sort of the only life that you've ever been allowed to think you could have. And
Yeah.
now you're heading out into the world. What kind of what was something like, a lot of people would just that would be just too much and overwhelming to them. What kind of kept you going to say, like, all right, I'm not going back to this guy, I'm not going back to this, I'm charting my own course. Like, what was that sort of North Star that you, or just how did you get through that? You know?
aside from just being extremely stubborn, I think, and at that point, like I still identified as a Christian for a little while. I did. That fell off pretty quick, but just going, I want to provide my children with a different life than what I am being forced into by my family or by my ex husband. I refuse. I refuse to go back to Montana the first cup 2 to 3 years of our separation. Like it was a power struggle. He was withholding my children and trying to get me to come back, drop the divorce, like do things his way. It's been an ongoing thing, and I just was so fed up with him as a human, so fed up with the notion of being his wife, that I was like, no, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to root myself. I'm going to ground myself. I am going to prove that I am good at work, that I can make as much money as you, if not more than $25,000 a year. He's like, you'll never make as much money as me. I was like, that's what? Yes. Um, so I really had this fire lit in me that I wanted to prove that I was capable of doing this. And of course, along the way, I wanted to prove that I was capable of being a single mom and having my children live with me, but was denied that by him for years, saying that, you work, you're incapable of being a stay-at-home mom. Who's going to watch the kids when you go to work? We're not putting them in public school. I don't want any of your family members watching them. So this just isn't going to work. And just flat out refused to recognize my rights to be a single working mom and
Wow.
still have my children.
So when did so you mentioned like the break from Christianity that came very quickly, right? What
Yes.
and so what's your like what does what made you decide to say I'm going to put this story out here for others to share? Like what was the thing where you're just because I'm assuming you're
Yeah.
taking a bit of a risk for this, right? It could cause
Mhm.
problems with your ex and your kids and like I mean, what made you say I have to tell my story? I have to,
Yeah, full discrepancy. Like I'm, retaining a lawyer to deal with some stuff, legally speaking, that he's raised his issues with my current Substack. He doesn't like the stuff I'm writing. Clearly, it's not painting him in a pretty light.
Mm,
So I am trying again to be very move forward with more caution, I think, even though I knew from the get-go that I was running that risk of waving a waving a red flag in front of a bull and going, "Hey, like, look, I'm not afraid. I'm going to tell my story now." Um, as far as what really drove me to start telling my story was realizing that if for whatever reason I get hit by a bus tomorrow, he's going to tell the narrative. And I don't want that. And my children will only hear his side of the story. So someday I want them to read a different side of the story. That's what's driving me to write, hopefully continue and follow through with writing this memoir. I'm like, I can't allow my family that doesn't like some of my, behavior because it goes against their morals, or him to be the ones to tell my story. And for so long, I felt very stifled. Like 5 years ago, took him to court over many of these issues, and I won some things, but unfortunately it's Montana court, so I
mm,
didn't get everything that I wanted as a parent, and I've had to make peace with that. However, it has been extremely frustrating to have lived through the upbringing that I did, and to have lived through the horrific marriage that I was just put into, and surviving, like coming out of that and not talking about it. The community I'm surrounded with here in Sacramento, they all know I have kids. Many of my closest friends have met my children now when my children come out in the summer times, etc. But I got really tired of just trying to retell the same story, like, oh, hey, you have kids, well, where are they, like, what's happening, like, you're a mom, that's so weird, I never knew that, why don't you have your children with you? And there's a lot of assumptions of why. And I decided that, well, if you guys want to hear the story, you can read it. I'm tired of verbally speaking it. I mean, I'm happy to speak it now, but like, I'm tired of
right.
retelling this to dozens of people that want to inquire about it. And it is nuanced. It is me coming out of an extremely sheltered childhood, getting married into a very conservative, traditional wife role, and then leaving that and developing. I've spent the last 10 years developing my personal, but my personal spiritual beliefs, my personal political beliefs, and they do differ radically from what I was under and subjected to for a very long time.
That I mean, and it's I think it's one of the things that I wanted to talk to you for a while, and I clearly it's I mean from the first stack I read of yours, it's just such an amazing story, like to come from that background where this is all this is
Yeah.
it, and then
Yeah.
one day it's like I've got to leave all that behind. I've got to hope that, and I'm just going to kind of venture forth and venture out, and that really is. I mean, it's a testament to your courage and your bravery,
Thank
and
you.
so yeah, no, you're welcome. I mean, I'm glad. It's one of the things I feel honored to be able to do things like this and talk to folks like yourself. We all have our own stories, we have our own trauma, but just I think like hearing this, and if you have, and for if you guys haven't read Anna Wick's writings, you're missing out. You absolutely should. It's some of the best writing, most real writing on Substack.
Thank you.
Definitely check it out. Um, you know, so so where are you at now? Like, how are you doing now? What are you up to? Like, what's going on with you now that you're like real excited about, or you know,
Honestly, just continuing to one, double down on my writing, trying to not be afraid of speaking my story. I know that I shared a lot of deeply personal stuff on my Substack, but I share it from the hopes of not just, oh, look at me, look at what I went through. Oh my God, it was so awful and horrible. And yeah, I mean, it remains pretty horrendous in my life, but in hopes that I can connect with other people that have survived living under high control religion, other people that have been men and women who are bearing the effects of living under these deeply patriarchal and misogynistic systems. It's not just about, oh my God, I'm, look at me. I'm such a great feminist now. I hope I'm also connecting with, like I said, men and women who are, maybe questioning what they've been fed their whole lives, or
yeah,
just now waking up and going, oh my gosh, look at how the politics that I've clung to my whole life because my mommy and daddy believed it. They're harming people. Like,
mm,
I hope that I can, in some ways, break through and show people this is who I was, and this is a transition out of it, but like this is who I am now and how I think that we can come together and really build community wherever you're at. Become an empathetic human being. Like I grew up in a family that told me it was okay to stone gay people. Like that's the level of awfulness that I came from. And some of my deepest friends now and some family members are identify as gay or queer, and it's like I hope that I can show people that there is a light to point to the tunnel to lead you out of that dark awful hole you've been in. And if you've been doubting it, let me tell you, like, I had little seeds of doubt. I just didn't really listen to them back in the day. I just was like, nope, I have to do this thing. I have to put on this hat and become this person in my marriage, etc. And I'm really glad I didn't follow through with that.
that's that. You know what? That's awesome, and I think like as someone who's lived through trauma and lived through anxiety and depression and been in bad places, I think that's it. You just kind of there's times in your life you just push forward. You just keep pushing, And so, Anna, I'm glad you kept pushing, and because that means I was able to talk to you today, and I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad we got to do this. We had to reschedule last time because there were literal painters inside my house. I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening?
That would have been fun, though. It's like but they might not have appreciated being on camera.
Exactly. Well, Frederick, Anytime. Thank you to everyone who joined. I've been seeing the little like comments. I this is my first live or my first Substack live, so I'm hope it's not the last one.
No, I don't think it will be. I see a little guy behind you peeking up. There
Oh
he
my gosh,
goes.
Watson, Watson.
Hey, peeking out. Is that Watson?
Yeah, it's Watson. He's like, "What is going on, Mom? Who are you talking to?"
Awesome. Well, thank you, Anna. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, I'd love to do it again. You know,
Yeah, anytime. Thank you to everyone who joined. I hope please feel free to comment, send me DMs. Like I'm, open to talking to anybody.
where can the folks on Substack find you?
It's just Anna Wick.
There we go.
It is her side. It is her side of the lens because I am a career professional photographer. So like I've been very used to telling other people's stories, and now this is my way of telling mine.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Anna, and as always, thank you everyone for showing up, and we really appreciate it. And we'll see you later. Bye bye.
Bye. Take care. Have a great day.